Well, here we go again, once again, with the national anthem controversy. Remember, it kind of started with, well, it did start with Colin Kaepernick back in 2016. Huge firestorm divide. You'll never see a bigger divide in the U.S. 50-50 split on kneeling during the national anthem. So basically, what happened is Mark Cuban, who's owner of the Dallas Mavericks, now he's kind of clarifying what's happening, but it's funny. Um, the Mavericks, right? They haven't been playing the national anthem before the games for like the past 13 games or something like that, and nobody even noticed. So it's only now getting attention for some reason. It wasn't even noticed for the 13 days that it wasn't happening, but what was originally reported was Mark Cuban had decided not to play the national anthem before the games, but now there's a supposed clarification. It says, in the wake of the NBA statement Wednesday reiterating its long-standing policy that all teams will play the national anthem, Mavericks owner Mark Cuban said during an appearance on ESPN's The Jump that his organization has no problem with playing the anthem at all, and that the decision to not do so to this point of the season was the product of ongoing conversations with members of the community who felt their tradition, quote, did not fully represent them. Cuban on Tuesday had told ESPN that he had made the decision to stop playing the anthem before home games after consulting with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. The Mavericks did not announce the change in policy, but the national anthem had not been played before any of their 13 preseason and regular season games at the American Airlines Center this season. And so he's basically saying that, there was a conversation going on because there were a lot of, players and people who felt that the national anthem did not represent them. It says Cuban added that the organization had always discussed the fact that it would probably resume the playing of the anthem at some point, likely when fans were allowed back in the arena. There was never any final decision that was made that we would not play the anthem. So that kind of came out after the fact, pretty much. But it was definitely, I'll have to say, it's a really ballsy move to make this decision, no matter how you look at it. I think some people are saying that essentially he's doing this for attention or whatever. But I have to say, Mark Cuban, to make this decision, you're talking about the Dallas Mavericks. This is in Texas, okay? Now, Texas is becoming far more liberal than it was previously because a ton of people are moving from California over to states that neighbor because there's just so many fucking people in California moving to Texas, Arizona, all these areas, Colorado, anywhere near Cali pretty much. And so Texas has become more liberal, but it's got a really loud, sort of conservative populace. So it's really surprising he would do this. It's definitely a pretty ballsy move. Again, nobody noticed it for 13 games, and so this is essentially re-sparking the debate once again. Adam Silver is saying that for every NBA game, the anthem will be played, which is honestly insane. Every team plays 82 games in the NBA, and the national anthem is played before every single game. Think about how many games that is, dude. That's absolutely insane. That they're having that many. You're talking about hundreds of games. And they're playing the national anthem before every game. Now, I looked into the history of when this started, right? Apparently, the furthest back it goes, I think the Civil War. There was kind of a fight going on between who got to sort of deem the Francis Scott Key, a Star-Spangled Banner for themselves between the North and the South. That's when it kind of first started. Then it kind of revamped up during World War I, sorry. And then it kind of revamped again in World War II. And then from around World War II and on, it just kind of became a tradition to play it before every single sports game, which is fucking bonkers. It doesn't even make sense, especially in a league like the NBA, dude. There's too many NBA games. I want there to be less NBA games because I'm sorry, 82 game seasons are just too many games, okay? They need to cut down. But it kind of goes to show the profitability of other leagues compared to the NBA. But I think Adam Silver is basically reiterating that all teams will play the national anthem because he's afraid of dropping numbers in terms of ratings. The ratings were pretty down at the start of last season. They're up from last season, but they were pretty concerning last season. So I personally believe that that's why Adam Silver is actually doing this. But it's interesting nonetheless that this would happen. Again, it's stupid that they play the national anthem before these. It is a political thing, so people saying we want politics out of it, national anthem is something that is indeed political, because you're talking about pledging your allegiance essentially to, the country. But the problem is, the reason why it's political is because there's always issues going on in the country that are very political. Not only that, people are acting as if wars are not controversial, or that there can be disagreements on foreign policy and wars, right? Like, it's crazy. So I had, the national anthem being played before sports games started up again during the Vietnam War. Like, dude, the Vietnam War is not something that's just unanimously great, and something that even a majority of people ended up agreeing with. So you're basically forcing people to essentially be blinded to these actions, not be critical, not have critical thinking towards any of these things, and somehow that if you don't support every war that the United States goes into, you're not a patriot. It is complete bullshit. This is the kind of stuff that you do in North Korea or in China, these crazy dictatorships, totalitarian dictatorships, where they force you essentially to do this kind of thing. Pledge your allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance, in my opinion, is actually way worse. Especially given the fact that kids are forced to recite it in schools. That is really fascistic. It is really fucked up. It is very, very stupid. Okay, it's really, really dumb. And also, the things of the nature of, like something like the Patriot Act happening, or stuff like that. It's always going to be political. So I'd be willing to make a trade, though. The trade I'd be willing to make is, if conservatives really want the national anthem to be played before each sporting event, you have to allow people to protest during that time. That's just what you have to. If you're willing to make that trade, shit, I'm down with it, right? Because it is something political. But if you want to play that and then have the people who are pointing out the flaws of America, right? Which pointing out the flaws of America doesn't mean, oh, you hate America. No, you actually want it to be better. That's literally the whole point of the United States, is criticism. People who give constructive criticism to the United States are way more patriotic than idiots who blindly suck off the United States and literally anything that it does. And in fact, the real difference between a democracy and a dictatorship is supposed to be, the democracy is supposed to be just pelted and just sprayed and peppered with tons of criticism. Otherwise, it doesn't really hold up as a democracy. It ends up becoming a sort of totalitarian dictatorship. So it's very stupid. Also, the issues that you get with playing the national anthem is you kind of end up contradicting yourself, because you get into the you come into the crosshairs, or the the crosswalk of, okay, well, you're forcing the national anthem, which automatically is, at this point, it's going to be against people's freedoms, at least in spirit. But what you're talking about is, if people are protesting during the national anthem and you're telling them to shut up or stop, you are hampering their free speech. Which, what is the point of the national anthem and the flag if it supposedly stands for the First Amendment and all the things that the soldiers are fighting for, right? But you're actively silencing what they're fighting for. So you're you're destroying yourself. It's super contradictory. It doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of issues with that. Now, Stan Van Gundy, who's actually the coach of the Pelicans, who up until this past win streak that the Pelicans are on, I thought he was doing a horrendous job. Terrible job playing Lonzo at the 2. Absolutely disgusting. But he says this should happen everywhere. If you think the anthem needs to be played before sporting events, then play it before every movie, concert, church service, and the start of every workday at every business. What good reason is there to play the anthem before a game? So this is a really good tweet. I think this really sums everything up pretty well. It doesn't make sense. So you can see essentially the responses are just some sort of smorgasbord of dumb stuff. This one says it's been played before sports for 100 years. Just because the country's been doing something for the past 100 years isn't an argument for why it should continue. So basically, they either say you hate America or it's a tradition that's been done for 100 years. Both those arguments are straight garbage, because the people criticizing America and what it's doing are actively trying to make it better, not because they hate it, but because they want it to be better. That's how you get in America, is people criticizing it and progressing forward, right? The difference between a China or a Russia and the U.S. is the U.S. is actively progressing. Putin talks about how he wants to keep everybody white, basically, in Russia. And you're seeing, obviously, you guys know what's going on in China with all the free speech limitations. One of the, probably the greatest thing, arguably, about the U.S. is the First Amendment, right? Seriously, it is. When you compare it to other major nations like Russia or China, I mean, the U.S. is a heaven when it comes to the First Amendment. And so that's supposed to be the whole purpose of it. So, what is the good reason to play the anthem before a game? Now, when you're in a situation like World War II, you're in total war, right? Like, you're in a war where everything is going towards the war. Everything is about winning the war. Nazi Germany is trying to basically take the Axis powers are trying to take everything over. At that time, you're at the sporting events. I get that. That makes sense. But to do it now before every single sporting event is just absolutely insane. But hey, if you want to play the Star Spangled Banner before every single game and allow players to criticize and protest during that time, I have no issue, honestly. I don't, because I actually think it's a good thing, because then I feel like it really gives the opportunity for people's criticisms of the U.S. to actually be heard. Racial issues and things of that nature, civil rights issues, civil liberties issues like the Patriot Act and things of that nature. So the problem I have with the national anthem being played before sporting events, first of all, is because it doesn't have any place there. But two, it sort of breeds blindness, it breeds blind patriotism, it breeds a lack of critical thinking, and it breeds this idea that the U.S. war machine can just do whatever it wants, and you have to 100% back it, otherwise you're not a patriot. They did this during the Iraq War. They do this during all unjust wars. Vietnam War. They do that all the time to try to paint people who are critical of the war as not being patriots. So war, vast majority of the time, is very controversial. It's very political. The national anthem is indeed, yes, it is political. And if you're praising a nation, there are actively a lot of issues. If you want to play the national anthem but have people allowed to protest during it, I'm actually okay with that. But I don't know how this is going to go. It's going to be a bunch of sort of back and forth. I'm already seeing Republicans. It's interesting to see, because Republicans are supposed to be all about the freedom, all about the sort of delineation of power, federalism. They're supposed to be more about states' rights. In this situation, it's the NBA, top of the NBA, Adam Silver, basically demanding and commanding every team to play the national anthem, which really is not in line with the sort of states' rights and local rights and delineation of power that they support, and overturning, Mark Cuban's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He has the power over the Mavericks. You're not really following freedom. You're like, they're celebrating, like, yes, they got forced by this power to do this. Dude, I thought you were the party of freedom. I thought you were like, it's so embarrassing. But conservatives are just fucking losers.